everyone, welcome to the video. So I wanted to show you a little demo of the new Kelly Creates dual brush pens. They're called the Dream Pens. And I did some testing before I started taping, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of a walkthrough of what happened. So basically when I did the first part of the review, I had some trouble moving the ink with a water brush. So these are not really, I don't know if they are dye based. I did try to find out as much information about them as I could. So without knowing exactly what these are made of, I just thought I would start out doing swatches for you. So you can see on the right hand side there's a larger brush, and on the left it'll show you the smaller squiggle so you know what size of the brush pen you're getting. So right now I'm using the large brush, and these pens are unique in that they both ends have brush tips on them, one small and one large. These have a lot of versatility as far as being able to use the wider tip and get some fatter lines, and the smaller tip to get some skinnier and more detailed lines. And I thought the array of colors was really nice. It's a set of 10, and it's not really a traditional rainbow of colors. Like, you don't have a true red. The coral is the closest to red that you get. It's a nice shade range. To me, it's neither too bright or too dull. In some cases, I like sort of medium toned color sets, because sometimes if it's too bright, they can be a little bit tricky to work with. And so you'll see here in a second that the yellow is quite bright, almost fluorescent. And otherwise, though, it's, I wouldn't say muted, but fairly mid-tone as far as colors go. And I will show you a little bit of how I attempt to move the ink around a little bit with water, and it will bloom out in some capacity, but it actually is, I don't think these are really designed to be watercolor pens, even though they are called watercolor pens. They were in the brush lettering section of Michaels, and so these are really intended for calligraphy and for people doing their hand lettering. But I also think for mixed media artists that these would be a nice addition because of the price point, especially if you use a coupon. And I'll be sure to leave a link below also that these are available in the UK to some degree. They are not just available at Michaels, which is nice. Are they a necessity as far as if you already have a large brush pen collection? As far as I'm concerned, yes, but that's because I'm kind of a marker junkie. So that's just my take on it. I enjoy just about any pen as long as it works. So I definitely am going to enjoy using these. And if you guys would like, please let me know in the comments that you would like these compared with some similar markers on the market. Now, these are made by American Crafts, so that's the same maker as Jane Davenport's mermaid markers, and these are quite different from the mermaid markers. So if you already have the mermaids, I would say that these would be a nice accessory to those. For one thing, the color scheme is quite different. Jane's pens tend to be very, very bold, especially the first round of pens that she released, and they are also highly reactive with water. So it might be nice to use these together with mermaid markers or other water-based brush pens, because these don't really tend to move with water or react to other pens. So that's just a little note in case you're wondering if these are worth a shot. And like I said, these are fairly new to Michaels, the Kelly Creates line. I've only really been noticing it maybe since around New Year's, so I'm definitely having fun playing with them though. So we're getting up to the last color here, and I just wanted to mention that this color I initially thought was black, and it makes for a nice soft black if you write it out and you're using the pen at full strength. But interestingly, you'll see that it has an undertone and it's not really black, but you'll see that in the upcoming testing that I'm going to do. The main color pretty much stay put, and I wanted to make sure and get that on camera for you guys, since the first test that I didn't get on camera. I showed you the results of. And as it said there in the caption, Midnight is definitely almost black when you write it out, and then it pulls a dark blue-green color. So now I'm trying out a little bit of color mixing, and as you might use with coloring in stamped images, maybe in an adult coloring book, so you can see where colors lay over one another. You can do some color mixing. I think because there are only 10 colors, there aren't a ton that are alike enough that you could really get a good gradation just using the colors themselves, although I'll show you a little bit later how to get gradients with this. It's very similar to how you would get gradients with Tombows. And I really liked how that trio there with the magenta, orange, and coral colors turned into kind of a nice sunset gradient. Now with ocean, lilac, and sky, you can get a nice pretty blue gradient. Again, even going over it 2 or 3 different times to try and pull some of the darker color, it doesn't really want to pull. So if you were going to use this for brush lettering as they were intended to be used, I'll show you the technique in order to get different colors within your letters. And you've probably seen this technique used on YouTube. But since I'm not a calligrapher, hopefully this will just give you an idea of how you can get some really cool effects with using different markers. This one is not as dramatic of a difference because they are 2 greens basically. Right now I'm showing you the larger brush tip. And you can get a variety of line weights, so you can turn it on its side and get kind of a fatter brush layout. Pardon the meowing. I'm cat sitting and I have a very talkative cat with me right now. So this is the small brush end, and it too can show very, very thin lines like I'm showing right here. And you can also get some thicker ones if you turn it to its side. And I'll show you in a moment that there's another cool thing about these. So first of all, when I went initially through and I did the swatching, having planned on showing you some of the watercolor effects, as you could see, when I added water, it just really did not want to move across the page. So I thought I would use this trick like we do with Tombows and distress markers and other types of watercolor pens, where you can draw out some of the color on a piece of plastic. In this case, I'm using a watercolor palette. So one of the cool things you can do with these, like you can with the Tombos, is you can load up one color with another and do a gradient. And so I used a yellow color, and as you can see, I dipped it into the green. And depending on how much ink you add to it, you know, the more strong your gradient will be. And then basically after you've drawn out quite a bit, you'll see that the ink will not stain the tip. So the yellow isn't really going to keep the green in it. So that's a nice feature. It didn't stain. Took more of the spring green color and ran it over the turquoise color to get a blue-green effect. Now that hashtag looking shape right there is the actual turquoise color. So as you can see, you're getting a combination of the more traditional bright kind of spring green Then I thought I would try to make more of a yellow-green, so I dipped the yellow into the green and turquoise mixture. And I also kind of wanted to see how it would go over ink that you had previously laid down. So it doesn't really shift the existing color too much on the paper, but I thought it was kind of an interesting way to play around with the gradients and kind of see how the pens react to each other. So for this part, I thought I would just use a wet paintbrush and see how much of the color I could bring up as a watercolor. And as you can see, it's a much less vivid version of the colors. So if you wanted to do sort of a wash effect with these, I think that would work really well to mark down the color, like I said, on plastic or on a paint palette. And as long as it's non-porous, you can use these this way. So I tested out the blue mixture with sky and ocean, and same type of effect where it's a muted version of the colors. So you can use these as a type of watercolor. You could also use a water brush, of course. And then just because Midnight is so deep and rich, I thought I would try and see if that came out a little bit less muted on the paper with a wet brush. And it does come out somewhat deeper of a color. And then once they're dry, depending on the type of paper you're using, you can always go over it with more color to enrich it. So now I'm just showing you what Midnight looks like on its own. As you can see, it is almost black, but you can definitely see a little bit of blue-green in there. And I thought that came out as a really pretty muted color using a wet paintbrush. And now I'm using the larger brush tip to write out the color and to show you how vibrant it is on its own when it's just coming straight from the brush itself. So the last thing I wanted to show you is how you can use the method in case you don't have a palette handy, or if you just want to try this trick out, is to take two of the pens and make them kiss and just kind of go around one pen nib with the other. And you can also use this to create gradients. This way of doing it is not as successful as if you are using a palette or a piece of plastic, but it still will do the job. So as you can see there, the lilac slowly started to blend back into the plumish color of Blossom. So you guys, this wraps up the video. I really hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up, and I would love to hear from you. I'd love to know if you're interested in these markers or what some of your favorite markers are to work with. And I will catch you in the next video. All right, take care. Bye-bye.